Guys, things are heating up because Kadyrov's son is appointed to lead anti-Russian battalion. Besides that, the losses of Russians in Avdiivka reach up to 92%, and the total eliminations since the beginning of this war already reached 327,580 people. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. And let's get straight to the point and talk about some ridiculous Russian propaganda. Today we continue the story from yesterday. If you remember, it was a serious part in my previous episode that the wife of the chief spy of Ukraine, Kirill Budanov, she was basically poisoned, and recently Ukrainian officials confirmed that indeed she was poisoned with heavy metals, mercury and arsenic. And what does it make ridiculous in today's episode? Well, you probably could have guessed that Russian propagandists already reacted to this news, and they had to come up with their own version what exactly happened. And long story short, according to the Russian propaganda, which by the way for some reason they had to ask this girl who was predicting the future with the cards, however accurate it is. According to the Russian propaganda, the one who is poisoned the wife of Kirill Budanov is Kirill Budanov himself, because he was jealous that his wife had an affair with one of the secret services of Ukraine, Mi-6, and he basically could not hold this Santa Barbara or telenovela or this drama, and he decided to let her go Romeo and Juliet style. I mean, to be honest, Russian propagandists could have said anything except this. They could have said it was Americans, or these were Germans, or at least these were maybe Ukrainians themselves, but not Kirill Budanov himself. So even in the most unexpected thing you would say, you would think that Russian propagandists would say, you can still never guess how ridiculously low they can get. Every single time they set the new lowest standards for themselves possible. But okay, enough with this clownship, let's now focus on something that actually matters. First of all, I'm gonna give you a quick update from the south of Ukraine, where Russian officers decided to do everything possible to make the life of their own soldiers even more miserable. Then we're gonna go to the east of Ukraine, where the losses of Russians in Avdiivka are up to 92%. And we'll finalize everything with what is son of Kadyrov doing right now. So yes, first of all, speaking about the south, right here is the satellite image from above Sevastopol, and as you can see, Russians are using electronic warfare equipment which interferes with the satellite signals, pretty much hiding this area from the photos from the space. But unfortunately for them, looks like it does not work that much, because according to the local residents, they were able to hear some very loud noises coming from the Sevastopol Bay, as you can see from this video. At the same time, as you go to Zaporozhye front line, Ukrainians were able to destroy yet another air defense system of Russians called Tor. As you can see from this video, the consequences are truly devastating. And well, what is the response by Russians? As always, the destruction of the civilian infrastructure. Right here, for example, unfortunately, you have a video of the comparison of Kherson port before and after the Russian invasion. And this facility was one of the biggest taxpayers in the entire region, employing more than 500 people. At this point, it is obviously non-operational and pretty much non-existent, but Ukrainians, they do want to restore it as soon as possible. Which pretty much is just yet another confirmation that Russians did go into Ukraine not to liberate it and save it from Ukrainians, but instead to destroy it from within, physically and morally. Next up, we go to Holopristin, and according to Ukrainians fighting in this area, they were able to destroy a pretty big firing position of Russians along with their assault group in Holopristin. And in response to that, Ukrainians were able to target and successfully destroy a local building of the so-called authorities and the local police located in Yuvileynia, and eliminated at least, reportedly, 5 high-ranking officials of the Russian military. And I mean, at this point I would not be surprised if the Russian soldiers will be absolutely neutral to this news, because their officers and generals and the administration, they literally do not care about them at all. If you remember from my yesterday's video, a lot of Russian soldiers from Kherson region, especially across the Dnipro front line, they were complaining that their officers and commanders, they're very conflicting in which orders they're giving to them, very confusing, and they simply, most of the times, send them in suicide missions. And well, guess what? The response of these Russian officials, authorities, generals, commanders, and just in general the Ministry of Defense of Russia is not to help their own soldiers to change the situation so they can fight better for the common goal of the Russian Federation. No. Instead, they decided to find those complainers who are spreading this fake news about the Russian army and most likely either quietly eliminate them or take them out of this special military operation. I mean, obviously war. I mean, just imagine this. You tell your employer that you found a flaw in the business process and probably even offer a solution how make things better. Instead of using these solutions and using their advice, instead you're getting fired. This is what the Russian officers are doing to their own soldiers. And well, we will leave them to be as it is. When your enemy is doing something bad, I mean, why change this, right? And so yes, now as promised, let me give you a quick update from the east as well, where Russian losses in Avdiivka reached maximum peak at this point. And then we'll finalize everything with Kadyrov's son. But first of all, guys, if you do like this style of daily news updating, if you don't mind, can you please simply like this video and subscribe to my channel to help me with my work. Thank you so much. You can also follow me on Instagram to see how I live outside of YouTube. The link is down below. And so yes, first of all, we just have to make a quick stop in Russian Belgrade, where recently some local residents were hearing some loud noises. Most likely this was the work of the Russian air defense system. And speaking about the air defense, Russians themselves launched several attacks against the territory of Ukraine last night, but Ukrainian air defense was completely dominant. They were able to intercept all 21 out of 21 Shahid drones and 2 out of 3 Ha-59 missiles. Next we refer to the report by the General Staff of Ukraine, which claims that Russians attacked next to Kupiansk front line and Ukrainians were able to resist these attacks, specifically next to Sinkivka. Then there were some attacks on the Liman front line in this forest area, at least 15 of them happened, and Ukrainians repelled all of them as well. And as we go to Bakhmut, Russians attempted to return their positions next to Avdiivka, and Ukrainians did not allow them to do it. Besides that, Ukrainians reportedly were able to destroy several military vehicles and assault group of Russians located in Novodruzhsk. But unfortunately, as we get back to Bakhmut front line, Russians did have a small success next to Khromovye, and as you can see from this map, they were able to advance a little bit closer back to this city. Going to another hot spot in the east of Ukraine, Avdiivka, Russians reportedly launched at least 20 attacks surrounding this city, and one of the concentration of these attacks was against Stepove. But Ukrainians reportedly were able to successfully repel all of them. Next we go to Marinka frontline, located right here, where Russians attacked at least 6 times, specifically also against Novomikhailivka. All these attacks were repelled by Ukrainians as well. But as we refer to the report by the British intelligence report, Russians started recently using RBK-500 cluster munition in Avdiivka, which can be either loaded with 350 sub-munitions or just with one big anti-tank steel penetrating big munition, which they were not reportedly doing previously. So this is something new. Russians are adjusting to the current realities. And at the same time when it is time for the Russian infantry to advance, even though, like I just previously mentioned, Russians are kinda switching their tactics, they still show zero interest in protecting the soldier's life, because right here is the video also reportedly from the Avdiivka front lines, where Russians are simply walking across the open field, close to each other, next to each other, almost holding hands. and they're all eliminated by one single Ukrainian artillery attack. And by the way, guys, today I have 2 or even 3 times more footage from Ukraine. A lot of this is something which I will never be allowed to show on YouTube. So if you want to see these uncensored versions, in addition to fully uncensored episode of the Russian Dude, please go ahead and check my Patreon, the link is down below. The support starts only as little as $4 per month, and there is always 1 week of free trial for you to see if you like it or not. Thank you so much. And so yes, back to Avdiivka frontline. Now, according to the report by the Institute for the Study of War, the main concentration of Russian attacks are confirmed, happening next to Stepove and also in the south in the industrial zone. But because the losses of Russians are so massive, the fields are literally full of their sleeping bodies. And we even have this video from Russians themselves, which, as you can see, are pretty old people at this point. No young man in Russia wants to fight for the Putin's regime. And they're basically discussing that from their entire company of 86 people, only 7 of them returned. Pretty much means 92% loss rate of Russians in this war against Ukraine in some areas, especially the hottest ones such as Avdiivka and Bakhmut. And the result of all this push by Russians and hundreds of lost lives, this is how much they're able to advance in the last 48 hours. As you can see, they're only able to contest a little bit of area to the north of Stepove. And besides that, NATO itself already confirmed the statistics presented to it by the Ukrainian officials that at this very moment of recording this video, the total number of Russian losses since the beginning of this war already passed 327,580 people. All this already just pretty much straight to the point facts that the cost of Putin's 3-day war to capture Kiev easily, nicely and smoothly is already a little bit exaggerated, and it is time for the Russians to wake up. And while still most of them are still unaware what is happening in Ukraine and the costs that the Russian people are paying, it looks like that someone, at least in Chechnya, is already starting to do something about it. And I'm talking about here the president of Chechnya, Ramzan Kadyrov, and his son, Adam Kadyrov, who is receiving awards, medals, rewards pretty much every single day at this point. And specifically what I'm talking about here, if you remember from one of my episodes approximately 1 or 2 weeks ago, Kadyrov decided to form Sheikh Mansour Battalion, full of Chechens. The only thing is that if you know a little bit basic history of Chechnya and Russia relations, in the late 18th century, this Sheikh Mansour, he was the one big opposition force against the Russian Empire, and he was fighting against Russians. I'm 100% confident that Ramzan Kadyrov or his close circle, they do know who Sheikh Mansour used to be, so naming the battalion after his name, I don't think this is just a coincidence. And recently it has been announced that Kadyrov's own son, Adam Kadyrov, will be leading, will be presiding, will be operating, will be the commander pretty much of this Sheikh Mansour battalion. At this very moment, the number of soldiers in this battalion or any other new formations which Kadyrov recently established, which are also pretty questionable in relations to their loyalty to Russia and Putin. The number of these soldiers is anywhere between, I would say, 800 to 3,000, according to different sources on the internet. So long story short, it might not be the force to employ in Ukraine and hope for some changes, but it might be a pretty convenient little personal army. After all, whenever Prigozhin was marching against Moscow earlier this year, he did not need tens or hundreds of thousands of people. This was done with once again his small private military, something what Kadyrov is doing right now. And who Kadyrov can trust to lead this battalion for his sake? Who else other than his very own son, Adam Kadyrov. So obviously at this very moment these are just wild speculations, but the facts point that there is something suspicious about everything that's going on between Chechnya and Russia. And usually the biggest ambushes come from the people you least expect, such as for example in our case Putin versus Kadyrov. So let's wait and see. If you don't want to miss whatever is going to happen, just once again, please consider subscribing to my channel. It only takes one click. Thank you so much, patrons, for your support, and see you tomorrow.